It looks like it's stuck. Okay, yeah, we're good. All right, let me pull up the live on my phone so we can track some comments, questions. Yeah, just had a really good show a second ago. With,
oh, really? Good.
Yeah, actually two. We had one with Miguel Dean this morning, whose play is Sacred Masculine, and then Zachariah Crawl, who's really, really interesting. Yeah, I got lit up on that one. I figure I'm gonna get lit up on this one too. I was seeing a lot of stuff. Then I got in the car to drive down the road and take a break with Morgan. I'm like, I can't drive all this stuff that's happening.
Right.
It's appearing in front of my head. I'm like, I can't even see the road. All right, let's see. Where we at?
That's when you tell the car to take over.
Yeah, I was getting to that point. I feel like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars when he has that mask on his and he's trying to train. All right, we got 10 people in the house. You're gonna give it a second. Oh, we're right on time. Let me share to the network real quick. We're gonna roll the show out formally in just a second.
Sure.
Shout out to everyone at Soulogy, Ignite Your Life, Your Divine Self. The event is happening, Rising Above, 13 Dimensions of Consciousness, Circle of Life, Spiritual Healers, 1111 Movement, Twin Flame Healing Network, New Earth Ascending Soul, 5D High Tribe, and Infused Lights. Thank you all for your continued love and support and contributions to keep us going every single day. We wake up and find a way to do it again. That's pretty much the way this whole thing's working. We're going to talk to Franco about that. Hello, Andrew Rawlings, Maria Iverson, Mary Rakowski, Jenny Smith, and TL Guadalupe is in the house. Robin Carey Holland, Susan Curtis. Good to see everybody. These shows resonate. Please share. We would appreciate it. Keep us above the algorithms of Facebook. Yeah, we got Franco DeNicola back with us. We had a great show last time. He told us about how he got into this incarnation. And if you want to see that episode, you can go to YouTube, SoulogyOneStudios. You can go to my page on Facebook, go to photos, go to albums, go to videos, and they're all there in chronological order. So that's the best we can do for archives right now as we work on our website. Thank you, Michael Van Patten, for all the work that you're doing. So Franco, what's been happening since we talked last time? There's a lot of stuff going on energetically.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. By the way, just in case anybody activates the link to my website, the website is down today because it's being switched over to the new one. So if you go on there, you might see some weird messages and stuff. That'll be rectified hopefully by tomorrow. They said maximum 48 hours, but we'll see.
Right on.
But yeah, I mean, there's been a lot going on, and the last couple of weeks or so, people, I work with people all the time, and I've been hearing a lot of people have been having pretty intense things coming up, triggers and so forth for themselves. But not only that, is that they're also feeling much more connected to what's really happening on a collective scale. And a lot of times it's a bit of confusing. What am I feeling? Am I feeling, or is it my own stuff, or am I feeling in conjunction with the stuff that's around me, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting part is a lot of us actually agree to take on certain, I wouldn't call it challenges, but certain tasks, and saying, well, I could do this, and I can be pushed here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to transmute it. I'm going to go through the experience, and I'm going to actually come up with another way to see it so that I can feed it back into the collective. So it allows a lot of the lineage stuff to kind of get cleared up, but also from a larger collective scale. Now, collective is interesting because there's the collective of our whole planet, okay? But we're in sub-collectives. So depending where you are, like if you're in a family unit, you already have one little collective in a family unit, and you're in a family dynamics, which extends to your extended family. That's another level of collective. But then, you have a collective that you go to work in, a collective that you join with other people. So, and if you're affiliated with an organization like religion or something, there's another level of collective. If there's an organization where you are a certain Nationality or something. That's another collective. But the nationality one is also localized, and it's also collective in a larger scale. So localized meaning collective in your area.
Yeah.
But then you know, it could be the state, it could be the province, it could be whatever, and it extends from there, right? So it depends on what we take on. A lot of times when we talk about the collective, is really what collective are we really tapping into? Is it just a small portion of it? Or are we talking about the collective from a human perspective of what we say, all humanity on the planet, right? Type of thing. And what is a collective? When you're looking at what that is, it's basically states of energies that people are emitting, what they're actually bouncing off each other, their state of consciousness, their thought patterns, their way of responding, what emotions are utilized. Those all make up the makeup and the energies and what you call the scenery of that particular collective. So there's a lot of involvement that takes place. So there's so many different aspects that come into play. You know, it's not just a thought form or, you know, an energy or something like that. There's more to it, right? Where we find challenges, and this is what people are feeling, is if we still have some idea, concept, belief system, or program within ourselves that relate with a particular thing that's playing out, a particular theme or a particular thought patterns and so forth, we're not only just experiencing what our collective is transmitting, we're also feeling what we are activating within ourselves, because a lot of times we have emotional charges, we have emotional memories from, you know, various things that we've experienced in this lifetime. And sometimes we go into 2 different lifetimes, you know, and that almost needs a clarification, because we have 2 streams of lifetimes, you know, one is a soul stream and the other one is a human entity stream, you know, so that we can experiment and play with that if you want to at some point. So in essence, the other thing I just realized this last couple of weeks, and this is from observing, and this involves even my own personal experience. And when you make a change, and this applies to everybody, when you make a change in yourself, you get a kickback. Okay, what does that mean? The kickback is actually, say, one of your collectives that you're in. Let's take a simple example. You're at home with your family, okay? You start to shift things. So you're in that more natural state, or you're shifting certain parts of your life, your reality starting to shift, your way of seeing things starts to shift, the way you respond starts to shift, and things of that nature. And what happens in the family dynamic, at times you'll get a feedback from them. Even if they don't respond in a verbal sense, you will get an energy sense, because what happens is you're disrupting the unit. And the unit says, we have to be like-minded. We have to be like, I'm only used to you at this state. Now you're going out of my range. So that makes me uncomfortable. So what it does is actually energetically and from a conscious perspective, it has a kickback. It's trying to put you back into place. Like you saw this, I'm sure you experienced this, Todd, when you started to shift in your way of life and your choices, preferences, and things of that nature. And your family may not be on track with that. They're always, you know, trying to bring you back and say, wait a minute, that's crazy. You know, this is the way life is. And they apply their way of looking at things and so forth. Because, and I love when they say, well, you know, we're all the same here. We're all doing the same thing. You're the only one that's the oddball, or you're the one that's actually branching out or doing of some. That's the kickback. That's the thing is like, wait a minute. What are you going out that door for? Like, no, you're staying in the room with us. We're playing together. You cannot step out of it. So that's only one level, Todd. The next level, from a higher perspective level, it's saying, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, get out of the room. Show us how you do it. Be the change. Do whatever, because we really want to experience the change. But the ego program, the artificial intelligence that we talked about last time, which basically says, no, we're going out of uncharted territory. We're not interested in that. I have control at this level. We're not going to go into that. So that can cause some really interesting experiences when you're having all of that taking place. So I've noticed that then, of course, it extends to other levels of collective. So in essence, you'll notice when you are, like, look at into social media. many people now have been branching out, like yourself, that have been talking about higher consciousness, been challenging systems and so forth. You may not be, what do they call it? They have a name for it. Not the whistleblowers, but it's a
Truth.
yeah, it's truth movements and stuff like that. They have different things, or conspiracists or whatever it is, right? So guess what happens? All the different social media systems already start blocking you out. It doesn't give you access, or starts to cut off your funding or something of that nature, because it's a kickback. It's saying, wait, you're disrupting the system. You're getting outside of the inverted 3D, which is what we're programmed to do.
Yeah.
You can't get out. So, but if you persist, and when I say persist, it's not a fighting, it's just you stay on track what you're doing, and you remind yourself, this is what I feel resonant to do, and I'm going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
But you don't go in fight mode. You let whatever's going on around you happen. But at the same time, you still continue taking the steps like you did, right? You get blocked off from Facebook, you find another way. You go into YouTube, you go into Zoom, you go into other, and you're also working on your own platform. If you get blocked off somewhere else, you're going to say, well, listen, the message still has to go out. People are still looking for it. We're at a time where people are looking for resources, and also, but when I say resources, they're kind of really stuff that resonates with them, that actually almost gives them permission to believe what they already know inside. Because a lot of us have this idea of disbelief that it's even that way, but that's just the program, right? So in essence, this is what's taking place, right? But you stay true to your message, true to what you're doing, because on the back end, you're supported massively. On the front end, a little bit, but you have a lot of opposition that comes in too, right? But even on the back end, there's another level of the back end that actually would like to shut you down too at the same time. But the thing is, it doesn't have any power unless you get into a fear state, or unless you let it, take you down. And, because our artificial intelligence, what we call the ego, when it sees a little bit of a disappointment, guess what it does? It goes, oh, this is futile, whatever it is, it'll give you those thoughts. It doesn't mean you may respond to it, but a lot of people buy into it. A lot of us all do it at one point or another. And we've probably had that experience over and over again. But in essence, you just remind yourself, oh, yeah, I see who you are. I see that operating system. I see that your purpose is to shut me down and not to step out of the box. But I'm not interested in participating. I'm not interested in giving any power to that. So I'm just going to carry on, regardless what you say and do, and whatever is triggered at this point in time, because I'm just going to do it regardless, right? And that's what you end up doing. And so a lot of people right now have been feeling that, and it's been accentuating in many ways. So the accentuation is two parts. One part is that it's assisting us to move really powerfully, quickly, a deeper recognition of who we are, bringing that part of it into our human experience, and watching all the choices and preferences that we've had, and the life streams that we have, and then decide, I don't need this. I don't need this. Oh yeah, I can accentuate on this. I can spend more time on that. And it's really a fine tuning to match with your new state of being. So that part is coming into play. But at the same time, all of this other stuff also is showing up as baggage and whatever else that we may have. And when I say baggage, it's lovely baggage, it's beautiful baggage, because that baggage actually served us at one point in time. So when we look at it, there's no mistakes. When we look at it, and I know this sounds insane to people, because I remember when I started saying years ago, people go, what do you mean I'm making mistakes? Like if I did this and I did that, and I go, well, you weren't ready. You weren't really in that alignment at that time. You needed that choice. Why did I have to have pain? Well, the pain is optional, but if that's what it takes to wake up, that's the thing that redirects you. Hey, well, that's the attention giver. It's like the alarm. If I have to have a big gong to wake me up, then that's what I'm going to need. A little chime is not going to do it. So in essence, so we got to see, we make choices because it is exactly what serves us. First of all, the state of consciousness that we're in. Second of all, is because that's the journey that we need for ourselves. But there goes more than that, Todd. See, our journey is not alone. We're all one here, but we're all assisting each other. So at times, the choices we make, the engagements we have, are not just for us, they're for other parties that we have agreed to play with. So at times you may take on a role that may not be totally your thing. You're going to get something out of it no matter what. But in essence, it's much more powerful for others around you and that you have agreed to. And then they will do something in return. And if it's not them, it's somebody else. So it's a beautiful movement because we're all into that understanding that, this what people call ascension, this awareness or shift in consciousness. This is not about just you. It always starts with you, meaning us individually, but it's about, this is what the thing I said a couple of years ago. I said, the thing shifted from us awakening, or what we call us shifting into a consciousness, to us shifting into consciousness. And that means us, all aspects of us that are on this playground and other playgrounds too. So in essence, it's no longer, and that's why when the oneness came in, a realization, because oneness always existed, but in a deeper realization where we're going to plug it into our reality creation, that it is not only the isolated one or the isolated us, it is the collective us.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just expanded where it is. So in essence, by assisting others, and that is not taking responsibility or carrying anybody, but when we're assisting each other, we're assisting each other to remind ourselves to be able to help them walk through whatever they're going through, but never, ever, ever, ever are we fixing anybody or carrying anybody or need to do any of that. And this whole thing about healing too is the same thing, right? I hear that a lot, and I don't want to offend anybody because there's a lot of power given to that whole idea that we need to heal our past, heal our shadows, heal this, heal that, heal our bodies, whatever it is, right? Really, what is healing? The sense is, there's something wrong and then we have to heal it, or that something is real that we now have to go through this whole process. What we're doing is we're just looking at whatever we've experienced, process it to get what we need out of it because it is for our highest good, no matter what. And then just transition it, transmute whatever it is. The same thing with physical ailments. Why is physical ailments there? You either took it on because that's your wake-up call, or you took it on because that you have wanted to be of service to shift a certain pattern or something of that nature. But it's not about healing it. It's about really just basically getting into it, experiencing, and then transmuting it, or in essence, transforming it. Because I used to say to the healers all the time, and I still do actually, when they're saying, well, we're doing healings on people. Well, no, you hold a certain energy, a certain channel of energy to allow them to access that so they actually transform or shift from that pattern of thought, that pattern of emotional response or energy that they're in. That's all. Yeah. You're just doing that. You're not doing anything. Nobody's ever broken.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. I like that. What you said about the kickback, and then where you've taken it to the healing thing, because I always think of it as crabs in a bucket. You got crabs in a bucket and one tries to get out and they're trying to pull them down.
Yes.
So on one level, this one gets up there and gets out. One of the things that we picked up on, Morgan and I, the last couple of weeks is discontent, stuck, and watching it, and also seeing it in our field, knowing that it's, obviously got some individualization to it, but there was a collective kind of feeling, seeing mirrors of that. Mm-hmm. So the healing, you see this crab gets out of the bucket and makes it, and then I see this pool of discontent. You know what I mean? Because they now know that there's something above the horizon.
Correct.
So I like the way you put that. Healing becomes irrelevant. It's not even anything. It's not even in the dictionary.
No, it's not. And it's never been, because there's never been anything. So even if you're taking, say, herbal remedies or something like that, what is it? It's really, it holds a certain frequency that allows your body to pick up on that frequency and utilize it to kind of shift some particular experience that you may be having or imbalance within your system while you're going through that imbalance. That's it. So in essence, this is spontaneous shifting of their particular physical experience can easily be done as long as we do. Because the thing is, the more power we give, like, for example, when I say to people all the time, that I've talked about it, I said, look, feel the energies of this. Healing versus shifting.
Yeah.
Because they're both the same. if you had to look at it. They're not quite the same. But when you go in and say, oh, well, I'm going to go see a practitioner to heal me, you're going in already as broken down. You're also going in as disadvantaged. You're going in almost as a victim to a circumstance, to a physical ailment of some sort, or emotional idea, right? So now you're going in, it's like, oh, fix me, and you're in a disempowered state. Okay. But if you're going to go see a facilitator and you're going to go, oh, listen, I'm going to go and join and work with this facilitator so I can actually shift this particular experience so I can move on. Okay. You feel the two energies, it's like off the chart. One is like here, and the other one's like way up there.
Yeah.
So I had a practitioner some years ago, I think it's like 12 years ago. And he goes, I find that, doing my work with people is so difficult. So we had an interview actually, and he was interviewing me. And so I talked to him about this, and he says, wow, that actually makes sense. He says, I'm going to change the way I do my practice. And he did. So in essence, what he did was actually reworded the way he saw things. And when people came in, it didn't see them as sick people, didn't see them with challenges. They saw them people with beautiful experiences. And let's see how we can utilize this to shift it into another level of experiencing.
Yeah.
And he wrote to me a few times. He goes, I have to thank you a million times because it makes my work a lot more effective, and people are getting much more powerful results because of it.
Yeah.
And all it was because you don't see people as broken, or the fact that there's something wrong with them, right?
That goes back to that collective thing you were talking about. We had a lady on a couple of days, 3 or 4 days ago, that woke up within the last couple of years, long story, but very devoted. Was a devoted religious adherent, and then shifted. And so she has 2 teenagers, young adults in her house, and her husband, who's not into the woo-woo, right? And I said, well, what happened in your household? What was that like? She goes, you wouldn't believe it. Everything changed. The energy, everyone, like, live and let be, live and let live, or whatever it is, let it be. And then, and the same element here. So you changed his program, basically.
Yeah.
Everything changed for him. Yeah.
Well, the thing is too, you activate certain energies within people or certain states within people, depending on what state you're in. So if you're in a state where you're feeling uncomfortable, then the environment is going to respond in that uncomfortable, because the environment, your other playmates in your life, are going to have that part of themselves coming up. So that's the first part. The second part is there's a beautiful agreement at a super conscious level, which is basically a soul or higher self level, that are agreeing unconsciously to our awareness of being, in the mind state, that says, listen, I need some help. I need you to push my buttons. I need you to act a certain way, be militant or whatever. I'm just giving you examples, so that I can actually get to the point of saturation where I finally say what you just said is like, okay, it's okay. Whatever happens, happens. I'm going to go with the flow, whatever. And then they don't have to play the roles anymore.
Yeah.
So I've seen it in so many times, and I've seen it in my own personal experience with my own family. I don't engage. I never did want to engage in the fight mode or, trying to prove mode. But in doing that, I noticed that the reactions and the response and the engagement that I had with certain individuals in my family were very different than my siblings' interaction with the same people.
Yeah.
Like my parents, for example. My interaction with my parents was not going in and fighting or trying to prove anything. It was like, oh, you want to have that experience, you do it. But I did not in quite those words.
Yeah.
But with my 2 brothers, for example, or siblings, they kind of, stand there for, I got to, prove, and I have to be my own man. I got to do whatever. And then there was always conflict, and there was so much yelling and so much, power struggle that was going on. And then I would walk in, and it's just like, didn't matter how much was going on, because the thing is, I didn't engage into that because I didn't need to play in that game, right? So their role changed. All of a sudden, it's like you're almost seeing another version of your parents. It's like they were just about to kill each other there with my siblings, and they're okay now, right? But
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I'd have a shift, working with Morgan. I'd have a shift, and I'd wake up the next day and say, you look different today. You're different today. After a few months and her giggling under her breath, I said, that's not me. It's you. I'm like, oh yeah. But on another note too, when you brought this up too, in regard to things like that, revelations, epiphanies, things that served us, like you said, a lot of that stuff coming up. We ran into a guy 2-3 days ago, went to a little event at a house. Real interesting situation. The guy's hiking 15 years ago in the jungle on the north side of Hawaii and finds this overgrown structure with all this, vines and trees growing all over it. So he decides to clear it. Has a pool. I mean, it's obviously a very nice house. It was just left unattended. And there's a story behind it. He still has use of it sometimes. But I said to him, so what's your story, man? What happened during these 15 years? And he says, oh, that's just sawdust. I said, sawdust? Yeah, that's just sawdust, And I totally agree with him. What matters is where we're at and where we're going. But in terms of forgiveness, in terms of healing, some of these things that served us, it's like we can let them go now. Mm-hmm. Like they're not in the dictionary anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. In a higher state of consciousness, it doesn't exist at all. Even the forgiveness thing, like you just said, right? It doesn't, because in essence, what I used to say, and people used to think I was crazy before, now it's not quite the same way. And, when I used to say there's nobody to forgive, you thank everybody for the roles that they played, just be appreciative. I thank you, I love you, and for what you've done, even if there was somebody that was playing the bully or playing the really dark negative role or something of that nature, because in essence, they've been of service. Yeah. You're only going to have the experience that you either call upon, and you don't call upon by mistake. Don't think it's all this law of attraction stuff where, I attracted it because, I was having negative thoughts. No, it doesn't work that way at all. That's a whole different topic. But in essence, it's like, no, this is what you needed to have that experience to create an intensity and a saturation before you shifted from it, or you no longer required it, made it obsolete. I don't have to go there anymore. So what you're doing is you're always transmitting. I need players or playmates that will play this particular role because I have this particular story, program, and so forth that I've labeled myself and I'm attached to, that I'm ready to let go of. Because in essence, it's slowing me down, makes my world smaller. Like this is the thing about the crab you were saying. So you're basically, what happens to the crab, the one that makes it out of the bucket, okay? After a little while, realizes it's in another bucket. It's a bigger bucket, but it's in that bucket, right? Yeah. So in essence, you get out and say, I arrived in whatever it is. And it's like, oh, whoa, shit, it's just another bucket, a bigger one. Okay, I got to get over this one, right? Yeah. And that's what we're doing. So basically, when you get to the point where you're free from all the buckets, then at that point in time, you don't have that. But what do you need? You need some facilitation, some assistance sometimes, or by other playmates. I'm not talking facilitators. I'm just saying anybody that you play with, right? Yeah. And I'm sure you've had the experience. And I've done this many, many times over the many years now, several decades. There are people, and I'm sure you've done it, and I've done it many times, where you have somebody say something. For example, I've had one particular person that used to be a certain way in my life, in my younger days. And it's funny because I met up with this individual quite a few years ago now, but I remember talking to him and I said, that time you acted this way and so forth, and you really, really, made life very challenging and so forth. And he goes, I did? And he had no recollection of it, right? And he says, if I did, I'm sorry, but I don't even realize that I actually even did that. Because in essence, they were in an unconscious state at the time. They just acted out what they needed to act out. They weren't aware of it. We've done it at the same time. How many times have we said something and go, where the hell did that come from? Why did I just say that? Right? Yeah. Because the individual that was there, or whoever was there, needed to hear that, and you would be the best deliverer of that. Yeah. Now, one other little tidbit there. a lot of times what happens is the playmates that play the particular roles that we need are very already skilled. That's kind of their automatic default. So they're good. So say you need to meet up with somebody that's angry. So to kind of shift something within you. So usually you elicit to somebody that's typically angry, to kind of play the role being angry towards you, just so that you can see your programs, your responses, and so that you can make a shift in. But sometimes what happens is we're exposed to these people and we still don't get the message. So then what happens? We now invite somebody that is not naturally an angry person. That would, and when I say angry person, doesn't have that as an automatic default or a program, right? So in essence, all of a sudden they lash out at you. Yeah. Guess what? It's even more powerful. It's like, whoa, what the heck happened? This nice person that's so sweet all the time just yelled at me. That's that extra emphasis that you need, that oomph, to be able to finally get it. I go, oh, okay, I see it now, finally. And I'm going to pay attention and start to shift some parts of it, right? So it's a beautiful dance, Todd, how all of this is playing out.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I got to tell you, too, 3 or 4 minutes into the show, when you started coming in, the intro of what you were talking about, what you've been talking about, you were morphing in front of my eyes. I've been having a lot of weird stuff happen, and it's all cool. We're all multidimensional, but you were actually morphing into I would have to say, I don't know if it was a galactic aspect, but it was definitely not earthly. I just thought I'd let you know that.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, and not everybody can see it, but yeah, you saw it. I usually try to keep it in check, but I have 84 different souls that I actually like to take the driver's seat in communicating. So in essence, most of them have never been human before, so they have a tendency to almost kind of shapeshift. So I've changed into what looks like an alien or something like that, or some other being.
I'm used to it with Morgan. So
there you go.
Not a big deal, and it has happened on a few shows, but the energy is really, really powerful today. I wanted to ask you about monads. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts or your perception of monads?
Well, I'd like to understand what you mean by monads, because there's a lot of different interpretations. So that'll help me hone in a little bit more, and then I
think I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I mean, the number 12 has always been, since I woke, has always been there. So every day, all the time. 369, and then of course 12. So I think I might have mentioned this to you. So we had here, and I'll describe it by describing the experience. That's the only way I can really do it, I guess. So it's made of 12. We had an experience here first of the year where we were invited to step into a monad. It seemed to be my 12 and her 12 is how I would describe it, because there was 24 in that meeting. I think we did talk about this. We were told that we unconsciously entered the circle every night together. That's 2 of the 24. Then they said 60 years ago, we met here. That's when the agreement was made to come down, do Soulogy, and you two chose, as part you were part of the vote, chose to come down and do what you're doing. So then we fast forward a month ago. We get pulled up into a monad of 12, and we have a Q&A. The one that steps up to speak to us is containing the essence of Morgan and I as one entity. And so we had a Q&A, and I said, you guys seem to be up here, and the other one was down here. And they said, no, it's all connected. So that's kind of the short of it. Now, one of the reasons I'm bringing it up is because a few nights ago, we stepped into the monad, right? And four energies of that monad presented themselves to both of us. We had a triad merging with each one of the 4. And each one of the four showed us who they were, and they were incarnated, and we know them. So that's as much as I know about a monad.
Okay. Okay. All right. I just wanted to get a feel of what you knew of it. And the number 12 is significant because, in essence, you can call it monads, you can call it soul families. Okay. So basically, each unit with one oversoul is made up of 12 different signature souls. Now, the signatures are very alike, except for the last two digits, per se. It's like we're talking digits, we're talking codes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in essence, each one of us has a twin. Okay. And the twin has an exact same signature, which we're connected with. So in essence, there's two versions of the same soul with the same signature, same frequency, having two different experiences. One can be on planet Earth or some other planet. Another one could be a non-form for a period of time or on a different planet. But there's always a communication. So when we're talking about, soulmate, not soulmate, sorry, twin souls and something like that, that's what it's referred to as two souls with the same signature. That was kind of an experience that was it wasn't a separation, it was a duplication and then allowing these two to go there. However, they actually make one unit. Once the two finish playing in their realms, in non-form, they unite into one unit. Okay, with one same signature, bringing in all the experiences of each of the duplicates going out to play.
Yeah.
But so each one of those units make up one soul family, which we call one monad, with an oversoul, or what we call the center cluster, which is basically the whole unit that keeps the whole thing together.
Yeah.
And each one is a double. But a lot of times they count as, so sometimes you could see it as 24 if they're still showing up as 24. But a lot of times, because they're so already linked, they don't show up as 24. They almost show up as one. So when you're having a gathering of that nature, then you have a situation where you're basically connected to all 12. So when we're connecting from a heart level, we're connecting to our own soul, our own higher self. We're also connecting to our twin soul, but we're also connecting to the oversoul, which is the first unit. But that's only the first unit, because then there's another 12, that's connected to that one.
Yeah.
And that 12, and then there's other 12. So in essence, when you get together with Morgan, for example, she has her monads, or we can call her oversouls, or her soul family. And within the soul family, at times, because you've each agreed to come and play together and to play a specific role, the two units, the two clusters of a monad have made an arrangement to share back and forth, and a lot of times they're very close, that they already were part of the same cluster, for example, even though they're two separate units, right? Separate because they're working what looks like separate, but they're all connected anyways. There's no separation. Yeah. So the main cluster, the main encapsulated cluster is 144 souls. Okay, that's one major unit. But you could look at 144,000 units, make them another level of cluster, and so forth, right? But because the clusters are intertwine, almost need a board to write on, but anyways, there is all of that going on. So each of the soul groups are actually facilitating each other to advance at this point. Yeah. Now, the beauty of that is that not all of them are on the planet. Right. Some of them are in non-form and are as guides, or they're just basically holding space and sharing. Other ones are on another planet. So in essence, when you're tuning into that, you actually get other perspectives, other ways of seeing things that is different than what we're experiencing here on this planet, which actually becomes very instrumental to have us to see something more. Because guess what happens to a lot of people is that they take this experience, get so ingrained in the experience that they see that this is all that exists. And then whatever the system dictates and what they've been conditioned to believe, is all that is. So when we have that, that's kind of a reminder that there are other viewpoints, there are other ways of playing the game and to experience it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of that has been happening overnight at nighttime, and or in altered states, because sometimes this is happening while you're just doing your regular routine stuff, right? There's a part of you.
Like I was driving down the road a minute ago. This sacred geometry message is popping in my face. I'm like,
exactly, because it's so important right now to keep things going. You're going to see that. And it's interesting because you'll see sometimes flashes of different sceneries.
Yeah.
It's like you're just talking everything out, and now you're seeing you're almost seeing like yourself, you're somewhere else. It's like there's another scene. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And you just keep going and you see another one and so forth. It's just giving more information of what another one of your monads are sharing with you. And sometimes it's the whole oversoul, right? So there's a lot of upgrading going on because of that, and the other thing is too, you start to notice a lot of more things moving around you, and it's almost like you see the layers, for example, it's like a television station when it starts to pick up some other station partially, so you kind of see the shadow thing going on there.
Yeah.
That's really what's going on with that. But it's beautiful for that. And then when we start tuning in and we're starting to connect with that, you have a really big resource center of experiences that you can bring in at any time, right?
Yeah. That seemed very evident. There was one of them really wanted to speak to us. I mean, like I literally could feel their hands holding my ankles down, like, listen to me, it's me. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. But what was interesting, and we had the same experience. Now, a lot of times I'll do it with my eyes open, her eyes are closed. But the information's the same, right? So like, for instance, in this case, before we could merge with them, they asked us, are you ready to do this? Do you want to do this? We had to see their darkest parts, the darkest part. And she was eyes closed, my eyes were open. I was seeing apparitions of off-world, off-planet, off-universe crazy things. And so this is what happened. We had to go through that to get there. Now, this particular aspect was a feminine, and she wanted to show us who she was. So she did it with Morgan one way, and with me, she took me into like this, I would say it was like almost like artificially made trees, like knowledge, like wisdom, like they were the same type of energetic impression of a tree holding space and knowledge and containing, but they were huge. They were like these giant columns, almost looked like the inside, like a motherboard, with those, if you got really small and they looked like tall buildings and skyscrapers, and they're like, put your hand here and download. And that's the other thing about these experiences. And I know we're not unique to it. Tremendous downloads, warp speed downloads, just like, whew, amazing. Yeah. I figured you'd have some information on that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on around that, and we're also getting, when you're tapping into some of the things that the download is also coming from us, for us at this point in time, from not only from our soul families, but in essence, there are other beings that hold a channel from a whole completely different universe, and sometimes another quadrant of the galaxy or something like that is shared. But also nature and the animal kingdom and so forth are also sharing their heritage, their wisdom of their way of seeing things. So we get a deeper understanding. At times, and this is one of the things that, connecting with nature is not only just grounding, it's really connecting, and it has a lot to share, a lot of wisdom, but it also, it shows, kind of gives you an understanding, what we can call upload or download, of its expression and its experience and how it sees humanity and how it actually would like to facilitate so that you can actually work with it more effectively, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So there's so much in regards to all of that. But, the thing is, there's so much more of, souls that are working with each other a lot more closely than ever before.
Yeah.
There is a lot of reconnecting also happening at times. And I think I've mentioned it last time, I'm not sure, but, at times your souls will leave and another soul will step in to kind of cover for while the other one goes and reconnects with its family unit and so forth, and receives a tremendous amount of upgrades and changes and different exposure too.
And then does it return?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
So
Now there are times that don't. There are times that souls that basically are done, and the physicality is still highly usable and in a great position, and the human entity that occupies that body is perfect. So in essence, they're soul swapping. So what people call drop-ins. So their soul leaves and another soul comes in. Now, once upon a time, the drop-ins were where somebody actually ended up dying. Right, and then they come back with a different soul. That's not even a requirement anymore. It's been upgraded. So in essence, it's like you can just be in an altered state or whatever it is, and your soul leaves and another one comes in, right? Which will feel different in a way, and because the souls bring in a lot of other higher consciousness at that time, we'll start working with you, and at times, this is one of the other things. You'll notice at times that you may have an idea of what your life direction is, your life purpose, right?
Yeah.
And then you go through a soul swap, and all of a sudden your life purpose expands or it changes or something of that nature. And what was important to you at that time is no longer.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, I need to do something else. Now I got to go do Soulogy. I got to go do whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because that one is coming in prepared for another avenue or of not only adventure, but in essence of another way of service.
Yeah, I think a lot of people could identify with that, resonate with that, and that's exactly because I remember, in my case, I remember when it started, and I started writing, and I remember after a couple of years, my family saying, "You didn't come into this, you didn't come into this life with that." I don't know where they thought I was plagiarizing or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, but I've heard a lot of people really reflect the same story as well. Now you bring up a soul swapping, and then in regard to the monad situation, TL asked a question. I wonder if you could explain the soul anatomy. But so let me just kind of put them all together. So in this example of the monad, are each one of those a separate soul? And I guess ultimately, as it goes up, so to speak, it's all one soul. I get that. I get that. Because when we talk to that monad in the Q&A and asked about, are you connected to these other ones, this other monad? They said yes. And then they also said each one of these 12 has a monad. It just keeps going. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So so could you explain a little bit about that question that she has, the anatomy of a soul? I mean, is that
yeah, so the reason I said signature before, because basically the way to do it, to have variety and to be able to channel certain energies, and when I say channel, I'm not talking about the channeling everybody talks about. We're talking about able to project yourself in a form or to have a certain experience, right? So to create variance and variety, if you want to call it that, each soul has a different signature. So the signature is slightly different frequency, even though they're all connected. That's why I said it's a very long signature, and each soul family has pretty well all the same signature except for the last two digits, right? Except for your twin they both have exactly the same. So in essence, that's how they can be having a more direct connection. For example, it's like a radio station or a television station. You're going to be able to tune the channel and be able to all be at the same channel, but with some sub channels per se, for example, that are in there. So they can't, like, for example, let me try to find a simple analogy. You can sit in front of a TV with 10 other people, or say there's 12 of you watching television, okay? The same movie, same exact movie. each one is going to interpret it slightly different. Each one's going to get a different message. Each one's going to have a slightly different experience, but you're all on the same channel. And that's how it works on a monad. So each one is like you're experiencing the same access point of the energies coming in and the consciousness coming in, but each one is experiencing a different one. Each one is uploading with amongst each other a different experience from it, right?
Then it's all shared.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's when you're like, when you tap into the oversoul, for example, of that monad, which is the cluster that has the experiences of all of those 24 souls, basically.
Yeah.
So 12 units that have a duplicate. So you're accessing all of that. All that wisdom includes your own of your own individual soul. So the soul itself is basically its source itself, operating in a specific frequency, in a specific range, with a specific accessibility to be able to experience itself in various playgrounds. Because what are planets? Planets are playgrounds. When you're talking about and there are playgrounds in schoolyards. When you're looking at the planet, you're also looking at the solar system. The solar system is like a school, like a bigger school. It's not just the classroom now. So you, as yourself, you're in the classroom, you're playing in the classroom, but on a solar system, like the planet is considered a classroom and playground. But when you're going into the solar system, now you're in on the first level of school. So basically it's made up of a lot of different classrooms and a different level. And they're just different students, and they're all being exposed to all of that. So in essence, when you're tapping into that part of it, you're getting a lot more. And then of course, there's other levels where you're going into the galaxies and then the universes and so forth, right? Those are different levels. So all of that connection you can do through your heart, which basically is your heart chakra is a transmitter receiver. Every chakra is a transmitter receiver. Each one is different, plays a different role. So if you're talking into the heart chakra, it's your direct communication or transmitter receiver to your soul, to your monads, and the different levels of monads and so forth. Wow. When you're tuning into your third eye, okay, then you're basically at this point in time, a third eye actually has access to cluster consciousness. So from your third eye, you can tap into different levels of clusters. So in essence, you can now tap into collective wisdoms from the human perspective and the non-human perspective for, say, individuals in your playground, individuals in your community, and beyond and going into, but so you're now also can tap into the collective consciousness of the whole planet, collective consciousness of the solar system, collective consciousness of our quadrant of the galaxy, our next collective consciousness of the whole galaxy, and the next level of consciousness of the quadrant of the universe, and then the whole universe and beyond. So you are able to tap that. Now, the reason we have filters, the reason that we have certain veils that reduce it, is because we don't want to be exposed to too much access at once while you're going through the experience, because it will shift your experience drastically, and it won't stay in alignment with what you came here to do. You will have more access as you go along, right? So that's the third eye. And then, of course, you got your throat chakra, which is basically a transmitter receiver through sound and creation. The sound actually creates mold and shaping of energies and the shaping of potentialities, in a sense. When you're talking about your gut, or what you call your solar plexus, that's your direct connection to your human entity. Okay, so that's your transmitter receiver to your human entity. And your human entity is basically another level of soul, but it's not quite a soul in the same sense. But a human entity only reincarnates on planet Earth. So it does do incarnation, and it has past lives. Okay, but it's all based on human past lives. Okay, it does not have outside experiences, whereas the soul is different. The soul will have past lives on different planets. It will have lives in non-form. It has lives in all types of different variety of experience. And it is not, souls ultimately are not labeled, say it's a Palladian soul or a Syrian soul or a humanoid soul. No, it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you say I relate with a human or with a Palladian or Syrian or a Turian or anything of that nature, the reason there's a relationship to it is because they've had a multitude of let's not call it similar. They've had a multitude of experiences within that in incarnation, for example.
Yeah.
So if a particular soul has had a dozen Palladian incarnations, then it has more of that resident energy and frequency and maybe awareness around that. Where a human entity is totally different. It's basically the human part. Now, this is the interesting part. We require a human entity because in essence, it would be very hard for a soul to come in and operate a human physicality on its own, because it would be very foreign to the human experience, very foreign to the intricacies, all the little details of how it is to be a human.
Yeah.
Plus, it can't carry over certain traits. Okay, so the human entity does that. So it's very attuned to the human experience because it's connected to the collective human entity, which is every human has this human. Now, I'll have to correct that because that's not totally true. And I'm not that I'm, there are variances. That's it. So in essence, I can go into that detail either this time or another time, but it's up to you because it gets a little complicated, but it's actually interesting when you understand it.
Keep
Right?
going with it.
So,
I'm up for it.
Okay, so in essence, the human entity actually carries a lot of the traits that we use. For example, there are people that come onto the planet, kids, whatever, and adults that have never learned a particular skill set. And their skill set is all of a sudden like a beautiful artist or musician or able to have certain access to certain technologies that, have been, shared by other aspects of themselves years ago or a long time ago in some way or another. Because what happens is the human entity says, we're going to bring in the skill of playing the piano, for example. Just a simple example. This is where you see this facade, what is it called? Savants, I guess that's the word for it.
Yeah.
That's not the soul coming in with that skill. And I will explain that part in a moment. It's the human entity that brings that skill along from a previous life where it became very skilled at it. And it wants to carry on sharing that music. Now, where the soul comes in is saying, oh, okay, you play music. You already have that in. I'm going to put higher tones in there. I'm going to download higher frequencies so that when you're playing the music now, it's going to be upgraded to facilitate people to connect to that higher energy state to create more shifting, that sort. So that's where the soul comes in. And it can bring, galactic tones. It can bring in, different tones in it, but it still uses that physicality with that particular human entity that has that skill to be able to play the piano. I'm just giving you that one example. It could be any instrument, right? Or anything. Some are singers, some are, just the artwork or the engineering work or whatever they're able to do. Like you take somebody that's, like Tesla at that time, he had a lot of exposures and a lot of it was assisted because it came from extraterrestrials or other beings that worked through him. But that got all stored in the human entity. So there are other versions of him because sometimes the human entity, what it does is it replicates itself and it produces a few people going in that have somewhat similar skills, not identical, but similar skills so that they can be in different parts of the world to be able to bring new technologies into our reality here, for example, right? So in essence, it's beautiful how it works. And so each time, and usually the human entity stays with that physicality throughout the whole life stream, okay? Where soul is less apt to do that. It basically does that, but that has changed over the last decade or so because there's a lot more. And I wanted to explain the soul swapping thing a little bit more in detail because look at it this way. What happens to somebody that's living in one community all the time? sometimes they get comfortable with the community, but they don't make much growth in the community because there's so much similarity, so much, of the same. There's so much of, the same players in their life. They're not being challenged or pushed or anything of that nature, and they don't. So they want to have another opportunity to see other ways of living life. So what do? They pack their bags and they travel. They become a traveler. They travel in different parts of the world. They experience different cultures. They experience different countries. They experience different tastes and preferences and ways of communicating and so forth, to expand themselves so that they're not just enclosed in that particular experience, right? So that's what it does. So what happens is, if you have a human that's having a particular experience and it's kind of stuck in its pattern, right? And it's repeating over and over again, even though there's some changes, but, not fast enough. At times the soul says, okay, I don't want to abandon this physicality, and I don't want to abandon this human. And I don't want to come back into another form again and start all over, or, have to go into a different drop-in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave for a while, and I'm going to find another body that another soul wants to swap with. And it doesn't have to be a direct swap. It could be, okay, I'm going to take this physicality. I have to show it higher. This physicality, this soul will go, oh, I'm going to go try a different physicality. And what it does is expose itself to the life stream of this other individual. So it actually gets an opportunity to experience something different, actually access a different level of consciousness and experiences because of it. Then when it chooses to go back, it's more enriched because it's had. Now, sometimes some of the souls will have multiples, will go to several. Others will actually go back to unite to what we call the oversoul, and it will connect with that energy to actually be out of form and be in non-form and download and integrate all of the things that the whole family monad has to offer before choosing to go back into that physicality to ramp things up a little further, because now it's more skilled. And that's been happening a lot. And there are people that have had 2 or 3 souls over a period of time, and others that have swapped at different times, and others have left and come back much more tuned for the next level. And usually their purpose and the direction upgrades, and they're ready to go into another level of service or of experiencing itself. So that has been happening, and much more. Of course, then people say, well, we meet our twin souls or twin flames. They have different versions of words for it, but it's the same thing. We always have that connection, but at times we may meet in one particular human form. Okay. But they can be the same sex, they can be opposite sex, they can be one 3 years old, one can be 65 years old. It does have no variance. It can be a family member, it can be just a friend or something of that nature. It can be anything, right? And so it's not designated for everybody to experience that in any particular lifetime. And sometimes that happens and it only short-lived. Right? Because in essence, they were only agreed to be in each other's environment or space just to facilitate each other for a little while, but then to go back to have, distant relationship in a sense again. So a lot of that's been happening over the last several years, more than ever, because I noticed that, because I've always followed the trend of that and noticed it. I mean, working with thousands of clients over the years, you get to see, and sometimes they come in and they go, oh, you're a different soul now. You see what's going on with them, and you go, yeah, it's been weird. I feel different. I have this other aspect of me that's, sees things very differently and responds very differently. I feel strange. I don't even recognize myself or something of that nature, right? So, I look in the mirror, I'm looking at it and I go, who is this? It's like, it's almost a stranger, but it's because the eyes that are looking through it from a soul perspective is different, right?
Yeah.
And is not accustomed to that part of it. So, in essence, so that a lot of that's been happening only to facilitate things to speed up more than ever before. Really, so that's what it is.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to ask. So you just confirmed it. So a lot of this is happening. It's accelerating and happening more frequently because it's basically ramping up, because we're getting upgraded. They're going to gather the information, come back, and further facilitate what's happening.
Yeah, so it's not only it's the upgrade and stuff, but the other thing is too, it's exposed to other energy. Look at it this way. When you travel internationally and you're exposed to another environment and people differently and how they their energies are, you're exposed to other energies, not only their way of life, but you're also exposed to different energies. So that upgrades you too. It upgrades you physically, it upgrades you emotionally, it upgrades you mentally, it upgrades you in your viewpoint of things and so forth. So there's quite a few things that upgrade accordingly. And that's the same thing with the soul itself. When it goes out, it basically immerses itself in different energies, even if it's going back to the nomad, so that it's almost like renewed, recharged, and it's ready for the next chapter. For the experience. So
that resonates.
Yeah. So that's what really occurs with that.
I'm just curious. This is kind of a sidebar question, but how much longer do you think this reality of what you're describing, what people are going through, can it be held down in terms of just conscious awareness? You know, I mean, it's got to be. Energetically, it's a force, this force of awakening or ascension or whatever you want to call it, recognition, remembering. But how much longer could it actually be held down from public acknowledgement, basically? I mean, do you see that happening?
Well, you know, it's becoming more and more on the surface, but at the same time, we have to understand, and I'm going to throw some things at you, and you know, like people, if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't, because a lot of people may not.
Wide open.
Okay. There's 63% of the population still wants to play in 2D and are not interested in this at all. Okay. Then there's another large percentage that want to stay in the inverted 3D because it's very fun, a lot of fun and be able to play there and to do whatever it's doing. Then of course you have the ones that really want to go into the 3D, and then there's the ones that want to go into 5D. Now, so in essence, we can't turn around and say, well, you know something, you know, when is it? Okay, let's put it this way. If we're expecting everybody to get on board, that's not going to happen for quite a long time. If we're looking at saying, okay, the ones that are going on board are going to start changing the reality for their stream and the streams of the collective in that, because there's going to be almost a separation of collectives, really, in a sense, and parallel worlds, right? We're going into this parallel world. It's already existing. It's just we start to shift into it. And the two worlds are, one is hosts the true 3D and the other one hosts true 5D. But in essence, when that occurs, and the ones that don't want to play anymore, they can leave at any time. And that's the month of June and July is very highly intensified to help people to kind of, you know, are you going to go one or the other? Most of that decision is already made, but in essence, to kind of shed to go into one or the other, but also to check out if not necessary. So what does the checkout mean? That means the souls that do not want to, you know, participate either in 3 or 5, then they will leave. Now, does it unplug the human physicality? In many cases, it can. Other times, it just opens it up for another soul to come in. Okay, and possibly upgrade even the human entity at that point in time, if necessary. So, in essence, the staging occurs where, you know, if you're going to go in 5D, this will become mainstream. It's still work in progress, though, because one of the things from the team that I work with have said to me, and I'll just throw it out, basically, is that just the fact that we get to the point where we are all united as 5Ders, or the ones that are desiring, or have made the agreement, that's the right word, made the agreement to go into 5D, does not mean that you're instantaneously there.
Yeah.
It just means that you're now in an environment that totally supports 5D.
Yeah.
And what happens is that you may be at 3D. You may be just squeaking in the doorway as it's closing.
Yeah.
And now you still have a lot of work to do. However, the beauty is you're not going to have the opposing energy to push you out. In a sense, right now,
So I just want to be clear. So what you're saying is you're in the environment of 5D, which is supporting, which is 5D. So it's supporting that. You yourself might be not, you still got work to do, like you said. So you're kind of aligning with the environment now instead of creating that environment.
Yes, so that's basically it. So the environment now hosts 5D. So anything that's still lower than that will help you move through it. So you're still learning from it and whatever else, but it moves very quickly. It's not like right now, like you look at planet Earth right now, it hosts 2D, it hosts inverted 3D, it hosts 3D, it holds 4D, and it hosts 5D. It has all of that. It's like a real mixed bag. So it's holding all of those energies, even though Gaia, the planet itself, is 5D.
Yeah.
Okay, but it keeps enough of the frequency capacity to be able to host. And when I say host, not in a really good, powerful way, saying, okay, welcome, you can stay here as long as you want, type of thing. No, it's not. But in essence, it's saying, okay, I'm going to allow you to still be able to do whatever progress you can do for the next few months or whatever time, so that then at that point, the kind of the two channel energies become very prevalent, even though they're in each other. It's like two Earths in each other over layers, like two channels on the same TV set sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then what happens, you actually don't stop seeing, or you see less and less and less until you don't see anymore the one channel, which is the 3D, if you're in 5D. And if you're in 3D, you don't see the 5D. And the two and the inverted 3 disappear. In a sense, they either merge with one or the other. And
it's literally, and I'm getting this because I'm also getting this as in just looking at where I'm at and what's happening. So it's like the multidimensionality part of it is actually multiple dimensions right here. These multiple, because like for instance, I could get on a plane, I could go to my hometown, see my family. It's 3D or 2D or inverted 3D. I mean, I can go visit there etherically. Same thing would apply, I guess, as well, right?
Yes, exactly. You can visit, but that's not where you want to spend your time, and you feel comfortable in. Say it's a short visit, that's great, but after that, it's like, okay, now I got to get back to my residence.
I'm just not going to visit. Period. Now,
well, eventually they're not even there to visit anymore, because in essence you can't visit them because they won't really be in your frequency realm. So you can't just you get on the plane, you go there, and they're not there because they're on that kind of that alternate Earth that's still another channel that's part of our Earth, but we're not going to see them eventually. I mean, that's basically what the intent is. So even the memory of them and the attachments to them and what they represented to you fade away too, in a sense, right? So in essence, it's like, it's like some of your friends that you may have had, growing up, and it's like, you barely remember them at times. Some people you barely remember, some you still remember, or whatever it is. It's like, and you never see them. You never even run into them or anything of that nature, because they're kind of, you're in a different space for each other. That's just giving you a micro of the macro, right?
Yeah, I got it. I can see the trajectory of that. Now you talk about the human being not quite a soul, but seems, I know there's more to it than that. And then there's the soul. Can the humans thinking align with the soul it contains, like in one voice? Can it align?
Yes, and that is one of the the direction that it's doing. So basically, it's a harmonizing between the body, the mind, the soul, the human entity, becoming aligned where it has one teamwork goal that it works. I don't like the word goal because it's, but direction in a sense. So it all works. And right now, it's all fragmented in most cases for people. But as they start to align, you become even much more powerful creator in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay? We're always creating and so forth. But, at the same time, we have different viewpoints of creation. The body wants something, the ego wants something, the entity wants something, the soul wants something else, right? So it slows down the process because there's so many different ones that want to.
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes. exactly.
So this is a great segue. I hope you don't mind.
No.
You've got something coming up on the 21st or 22nd. I've got
Yes.
it pulled up here, and I was looking through it. Let me just pull it up. So, and this is what you're talking about right now, and I love it because I have this. I don't know. It's a language I understand, and I want to just read a little bit about it. Now, this is a workshop that you're having. I'm assuming this is on Zoom. Is it on Zoom?
It's on Zoom, and it'll be also transmitted on Vimeo. It's on both.
Okay.
And of course, once you register, you get the links with the password to get on it. It's a private transmission.
Yeah. So it's a live stream workshop, and it runs about 6.5 hours. Now, so you guys, this link is on my page. It's on the Soulogy pages. It's on Franco's page and Franco's other page. If you want it, hit up Franco, hit me up, and we'll figure it out. Now, the things that he was talking about here, what he's going to be presenting, he says, are we constantly creating every second of every day? Is it possible to not create? Are we creating on purpose? And is there a purpose that goes beyond our mind's understanding? So this is kind of where I was asking you, does that become one voice? Is the human with the mind, with the soul, really with the soul is what I was asking. Why does it sometimes appear that we're unable to create what we want? Now it goes on and gets in a little more depth in this intro to the stream. But I guess my question is revolving around this first paragraph, and really the last question, where I think a lot of people are. Why does it sometimes appear that we're unable to create what we want? Could you expand on that a little bit? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the reason we did the workshop, because a lot of people think that we're not good manifestors or creators, or that we're not in charge, or there's something else in charge, or that we're just the victim, and whatever is presenting. So we are always constantly creating. We're creating exactly what we need when we need it, how we need it, but it looks at a bigger picture than just, I want to create this experience. Because, for example, if you want to create a particular experience, the question always comes in, why do you want this experience? Okay? And the reason you ask that question, because there's usually a story behind it. I want this experience because that way I feel better about myself. Or I want to create this experience so that I don't have to suffer anymore, or that I do not have to play the game a certain way. I want this to identify, to feel that I'm liked by people, or accepted by people, or whatever, right? It depends on the story. Yeah. But if we're creating it in a sense where we're creating the playground so that I can just experience opportunities for further advancement, further connection, further of service, or something of that nature, then it's very different than I want money. Okay, what do I want money? It's not that you can't create that in your reality. I'm not saying that at all. Yeah. But in essence, if that's going to be what changes you, then it becomes a solution, but you're now getting the main theme of what you need to get out of it. So in essence, it's like, I want to get out of discomfort. Well, you have to be out of discomfort first, and then everything else plugs in afterwards. So in essence, at times our mind goes, oh, this is my solution. If I only had that, and you want to create that, but you're going in to create first because there's a lack or an idea of a lack. Then you're trying to create it because it provides a solution. Okay. Or it takes you out of a certain circumstance. Yeah. But the thing is, if you want out of a circumstance, change the story that keeps you in the circumstances, then the circumstances changes, and then all the other stuff that supports you to even go further out of that circumstance will come in. But you're the one that has to take the first step, right? Yeah. So that's the thing. And because I hear it a lot, well, I'm a bad creator, or a bad manifestor, or that I'm doing something wrong because I create always challenges in my life, or pain in my life, or suffering, and all of that stuff. And I go, well, the reason that you're creating that, it's not that you're making a mistake. You're creating an environment that helps you see something that you're not seeing, so that you can create a shift, so that you can go to the next level.
Yeah,
You're actually of service to yourself because of it.
And this is that question, another question you had in that paragraph, which is there a purpose beyond the understanding of the mind? That's why I was asking the question about can we align to one voice? So an example, in the top of the show, you mentioned something about, there's 63% people in 2D, and you're just not going to go there. You're not programmed to go there. You're programmed to go to 5D, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because Morgan said, when we were talking last night, she said the same thing to me. She said, basically, in this discussion, I am programmed to do this, to do A, B, C, D. And I look at the same situation as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm programmed to do this. So there's something it seems to me, anyway, I can only speak for myself, there's something in my human that is and has been aligned with that. That's the overriding multiple purpose factor, right? There's these 3 or 4 or 5 purposes, trajectories, like you said, or directions that the human has been on board with. Is that the human? Is that the human and soul speaking as one voice? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so in essence, if there's a knowing within yourself, well, usually it's your higher self that is in the knowing, but there's also another level of knowing which your human entity would have. But in essence, when you're talking about in training, because look at it this way, what is the mind? The mind is a beautiful, powerful computer. Okay, the brain's a computer, right? We have the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain, right? They're both computers working in essence together, right? So the right brain actually takes information from your human entity, takes information from your superconscious, takes information from your body, it takes information from other sources, and actually computes it and sorts out and uses the creative, intuitive part. That's why they call it the intuitive brain, because it takes all that information which we call intuitive, and then deciphers what it wants to create, and then it projects it into the left brain, which starts to create it into our reality. Now, the ego gets in the middle of the left brain part, because in essence, it's trying to come up with an alternate reverse story to kind of not let you take action in the direction that you are receiving as that part. But when but at the same time, you're being programmed in a way to actually deprogram the old programs that you've taken on and be upgraded in your program, so that in essence, you are more efficient in creating your reality and experiencing your reality and assisting in whatever roles that you play much more effectively and efficiently. So that's where the alignment comes in. And especially if they're all working together, which you can do. And I think somebody else on your show some time ago said it. I remember listening to it, bits and pieces of it. Is call every aspect of yourself together and kind of have a meeting of sorts, and say, okay, which one of you still wants to hold on to this older way, and then kind of have the discussion to see what it wants out of it, so that you can make sure it gets addressed with that, and then so we can move on, so we can all be on the same page type of thing, so that we work as a unit rather than fragmentation, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's happening with the programming part, that we are being reprogrammed, and the program actually now aligns with the programming, if you want to call it program, but the instructions that your superconscious, which is basically your soul higher self, is intending to bring into the experience. And the same thing with your human entity wants to bring in experience, because both have a list of things it comes in that it wants to do. Now, prior to it joining forces in one physicality, there has to be some alignments that there are similarities, not that they're all going to be, misaligned, right? Yeah. Because then it makes it even more difficult to it.
It seems like I don't know if it's the human or if it's the ego, but there seems to be some high level overriding going on. The human wants to do this, you know, and you're like, nope, that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
But if you listen to us and don't do that, step away from that, we got something much bigger over here.
Yeah. So let me give you an example here. There's a car. Okay. The car is designed to have capacity of performance, moving, doing whatever it does. But really, it doesn't do anything until somebody gets in the back, in the driver's seat and drives the car, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it depends. So the human part is the car. Then you have the ego that wants to be the driver. Then you have your higher self that wants to be the driver, and you have also the human entity that wants to be the driver. So you can have them. You know, what happens a lot of times is the ego can get so powerful, so good at what it does, it goes into the driver's seats and pushes everything else into the back seat. But what happens a lot of times when you go into 2D, basically they end up in the trunk with their mouth and hands duct taped. They're not even in the car, they're in the trunk, right? So, and then the ego is driving the whole thing. And ego is all programmed operated, and it's actually getting new instructions all the time from the artificial intelligence, or what we call the inverted matrix, and so forth, right? So yeah, so when we look at it, most of the time when what your example you said, you know, like it's saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, or it gives you one story or another, and you say, no, we're not doing that. You're basically communicating with your software, which is the ego, really. Yeah. It's like, because the body's the body, the mind is the mind.
The body's the car.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. The body's the car. We just need to duct tape and bind the ego and stick them in the trunk.
Yes. Or just get to a pit stop, leave them there, and take off.
Yeah. Well, I think we're headed. That seems to be, you know, like based on this last show we did with you. I mean, you know, that transition, you know, of course, in the terms you use, to me, much easier to understand than a lot of the things that are put out there. To go from this inverted 3D to the real 3D and the 5D and so on, that it would be ruled obsolete, and it's not even in the trunk. It's left at the ego graveyard or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like any software or anything, you know, some people refer to a virus and so forth. In a way it is, but it isn't. You know, it does compromise it compromises the experience. But at the same time, we can't see it as something bad because we agreed to take it on. We agreed to transmute it and then make it obsolete, right? Sort of thing. It's like even all of this, you know, the systems that we have in place, you know, the systems that operate our world and then make the rules and all of that stuff. You know, we've agreed to it. You know, do we still have to adhere to it? When you get to a certain level of consciousness, no. But I can tell you one thing, Todd, and I'm sure you've seen this yourself. There's a lot of people that are afraid of change. They're afraid of letting go of the status quo, even if it's uncomfortable. Yeah. You know, and somebody used the analogy, what did they say? It's better the devil I know than the devil I don't know, or something of that nature. So it's better that I'm in this state, but I understand this state. I understand that, you know, there's a government and an education and medical system and this and that everything is backwards and so forth. But I understand it because I've been in it for a while. I'd rather keep that than actually let go.
Yeah. It's so weird because the uncomfortable zone is the comfort zone. You know what I mean?
Well, so, that's exactly. And the uncomfortable is only because you're not familiar with it, and because the ego will keep projecting. Oh, wait a minute, that's dangerous there. We have no proof that it's going to be any good. And the fact is, now look, you're okay, it's uncomfortable here, but you know, you're safe here. I'm keeping you safe. I'm keeping you in this box. Look at this box. I'm fortifying the box so that you can't really get out of it too easily.
Yeah, we're gonna paint it. We're gonna repaint it. No, I mean, we got to jump through the dream catcher. That's life. That's living. You know, you got to jump through the dream catcher. I mean, it's
well, you know, look at our true nature, Todd. Our true nature is source nature. And what is source? Source is always expanding. Exactly. It's achieving higher and higher aspects of itself. And that's our fundamental state of being from a essence of existence. That's what we are. We're not stagnant. We're always progressing, always growing. So when you have on an experience, the experience is to continuously grow. Our experience is about moving, it's shaping and expanding. That's natural for us.
Yeah.
The stagnation is just an illusion of safety, because if you get out of the box, it may not be safe, and you can get hurt and this and that.
Yeah.
But these are all illusions, because it's not true. You will only have the experience you have. Like, I can tell you, you can protect yourself all you want. And I'm just giving you an example. You can protect yourself and say, well, I'm terrified. But if you need a particular experience, it doesn't matter how much protection you make, whatever you do, you're going to have the experience.
Yeah.
Now, you can be as loose as possible. You can be as wild as possible. Don't even think about protecting yourself. And if you don't need what you can deem a negative experience, you won't have it. It's not possible, because in essence, you only create and co-create and agree to have whatever will serve you. It's not the actions. Now, what happens? This is the beauty of it. If you're so stuck in protection, you're going to be challenged many times. Doesn't matter how you protect you. You're going to be exposed in a way that actually tries to shatter this idea of protection, only for one factor, so that you finally surrender and get out of it. That's the only reason.
Yeah. Here. I can prove the wild part.
There you go.
But I can prove it both ways. So, what you're saying is very, very true. So
I've had people that turn around and say, I've lived a wild life. I should have been dead 100 times over, doing things that were so dangerous. So if I look at it now, it's like, holy shit, I did that and I did this. And nothing ever happened to them, in a sense. And they're mesmerized or even freaked out about it. It's like, wow, I don't know what was protecting me. In essence, because at that time, they were just in total experiential mode, and they didn't even give any thoughts. At that point, they didn't even think of something bad's going to happen to me. They're just in for the party. So then afterwards, when they start to get cautious and they start having all this other stuff in, then they have more incidents, more situations.
That's exactly how it works. My dad used to tell me, you're like he used to say, you're like a cat. You got 9 lives, and then it got up to about 25. And he said, I don't know, but no, that's very true though. It's like if you become tentative. I was talking to Morgan about it today. Now, we've come from 2 different scenarios, obviously, with very polarities at work. And I was the type that when I fully got woke, I was hearing what you need to do. And it was like, I didn't have a long conversation with the ego. I just flipped on the video and just went for it, right? There was no rehearsals. There was no nothing. And it always struck me that force. It didn't matter what I was talking about. I could have been shadowed that day. I could have been hung over that day. I could have been anything, but there was something moving out of me, the throat, that was doing something. And that's what I was paying attention to. Like, here it is, go do it. And then anytime I would start to get tentative, Soulogy, and even just in my role, which is not the whole role, I would feel the stagnation, right? The stuckness. And that's kind of been an interesting thing to watch, because it's this separate kind of toroidal field, I guess. I don't really get it, but it's interesting how these third energies, I don't know, what would you call that? I mean, I just saw a picture today, and it was a triangle on top, it was a triangle on the bottom. I watched it in my head. They came together, kind of like a Merkabah, but they weren't pyramids. And then in the center, there was like an egg formed, right? And then I was like, okay, it's going to be seated. As soon as I said it, it got seated, and then it created this toroidal field. And I'm thinking, okay, how does that work? How do you influence that? How do you create with that, And after listening to you and the different voices, so to speak, that we're dealing with, I go back to, is it aligning all those voices, and like you were talking about, who was on the
Yeah.
show today with
Yeah.
Paula.
Yeah, and when that
Creating
aligns,
one-
then you create a really powerful force at that
Yeah.
point in time, you know, and then it's an endless energy source, and it moves powerfully, and it affects anything in its space and throughout, right? So this is why we're doing that, because that's where you're accessing that source essence of yourself and expressing it and experiencing it in that you're bringing it into the human experience, basically.
Yeah, I can see that now. I can see it. Thank you. I can actually see that. So I can see it. It's the same thing as, say, divine marriage. You know, you do this in here, and then it comes out. So it's the same type of template. So I align into one voice. I'm with a partner. She aligns into one voice. We align into one voice. And then each person that comes into the circle, yeah, I can see this.
Yeah. And that's exactly, because you described it perfectly.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
job.
you. Well, yeah, it's easy talking to you. Okay, so, man, I just got a big one. My head's tingling really bad. Can you see that on my head? No, okay. Okay, so let me put this back up again. You know, this is the year we've talked about it, or I talk about it. A year of expansion, sovereignty, co-creation, collaboration, supporting our brothers and sisters, especially those who've been doing the work for so long, and they've been waiting on the rest of us. Franco's one of those. So this is a live stream workshop, consciously creating and reshaping your reality, June 22nd. I didn't ask Franco permission to talk about this, but
Oh, you go ahead.
Go with my intuition.
Absolutely.
Went through some of this at the beginning. He actually has touched on some of this stuff even before I brought it into place. But, you know, are we missing some information when it comes to creating? This, of course, can lead to frustration, anxiety, because shouldn't it be easier? Have you ever wondered how we really create our reality and what is involved? Are we fully responsible for everything that we experience in our life? Now, he kind of touched on that, which is very interesting. I think this is a great opportunity for anyone who's seeking out there. 6.5 hours. I mean, if I look at the 3.5 hours plus that Franco and I have spent together, I can see very easily where he could move, he could cover all of these subjects in great detail and still have a lot left over.
And the thing is, too, we do hands-on work. We do processes, not only guided, but activation meditations. So there's a lot of tools that are shared. So it's not just information. So it's information, tools, and processes that we do.
Yeah.
And I connect with everybody while we're online. And we also lock it into the recordings, because if it's this Saturday, it's this coming Saturday. So if you can't be there live, then you can also access the video and audio recordings, because all of it will be recorded. And that way you can actually repeat the process or be able to access it at that point in time. People that come to the workshops always find it that is very powerfully transforming for them. This is there for whoever's ready for it. Yeah. And one of the things about creation and all of this, you know, looking at your life and saying, well, you know, I don't really like my life or anything of that nature. Well, this kind of helps you look at it in a different way and also really get into the driver's seat sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's what the whole thing is consciously, instead of just subconsciously or unconsciously creating your reality, you're consciously creating, redesigning, and your own reality, your own life stream, and so forth, right? Yeah. And so that's what the workshop is about. It's for whoever is open for it. We keep it very cost effective for what you get, and it's a good source material. This time what we're doing, and we've done this for a while now, is if you're on the live stream, you also get the recordings automatically.
Yeah.
Okay, so even the $65 Canadian that you pay, and there's small service charge through Eventbrite, which is a few dollars. that you'll be able to be on the live stream and also get the video and audio recording. If
Yeah.
you can't, then for $45 Canadian, which in American is probably what, $38 or something like that, or less.
Yeah.
Because of the exchange, you actually get all the videos and audio recordings, and they're all broken down into the different subjects, so you can repeat various subjects as you're going through whatever you're going through. And it's a good resource material. And anybody else after that, we also have various other workshops that we did earlier this year, that are also available, and also the retreat that is a 5-day worth of content is also available. And we have another workshop, another retreat coming up on July 28th to August the 4th. It's a full 7-day. The package includes accommodation, food, and the whole experience. 7 days connecting in nature, and also, I mean, there's a lot of processes that they get a lot of content. It's mind blowing what they get.
This is very cool. Now, do you do this with a group? You refer to a group you work with, but I mean, is this mostly you, or do you have other people helping you?
No, it's myself. Kimberly, my partner, she does all the administrative stuff in the back end and so forth. In this particular one, we have a couple of other people that come in to do. One does yoga and sound meditation with the bowls and gong, and then there's another lady that does a little practice that teaches you how to use your to express through art. So those are just a couple of little things that will be in there, but the majority, 95% of the whole thing is I do myself. Yeah. And when I talk about a team, I'm talking about my team of souls that work with me, through me, and so forth, right?
I got you. I just wanted to make sure. And also, so I could segue into, maybe we should do some type of collaboration here in Kauai. It's a pretty good location, and have a little.
I haven't been in Hawaii in a long, long time, so it would be nice to do something there for sure.
Well, I thought I would just put that out there. I know we're going to talk tomorrow. I look forward to that. I look forward to collaborating with you again, be it in Kauai or anywhere else, or here online again, because I love these conversations, and I think people are getting a lot out of it. Thank you very much for honoring us again with your presence and sharing time with us, sharing space with us. And again, everybody, it's 5 days out, this live stream that Franco's doing on creating. I think it's very reasonable. That's 45 and 65 Canadian, so that's, I don't know what that is, 35 and 50 American, which is, we spend that driving down the road or stopping at the mall and staying in the store too long, so thank you again, Franco. I look forward to future collaborations, and look forward to talking to you tomorrow.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for having me on your show. And I find it equally pleasurable to communicate with you and holding the space with you and so forth. So it's an absolute pleasure on my end too.
I'm glad to hear that. Same here.
And I think we're getting together on the 28th again, also with this. I think. I think Morgan has already booked us for the 28th again. So.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, the 28th of this month. Yeah, so it'd be.
Very good. Tell her hello too. What's her name? What was her name?
No, Kimberly.
Kimberly. Yeah.
Yes.
Tell her hello. Yeah. Best to you. Thank you, TL, for putting us together again. Take care, Marco.
Yes,
Franco.
thank you.
I'm in the other show already. All right.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.